So I don't know how many of you remember the old Golden Dawn. Used to be right across over here where the bakery is now. Okay. Every summer, they'd have their Golden Dawn days down at Conant Lake Park. And so that was back in the probably mid-'60s, I remember going. Terrifying of the blue streak. My sister went with my dad, and I thought, that's the big. So, yeah, 5, 6 years old, I had no interest there. But the one thing for me, it was the giraffe on the carousel down there. Their carousel was a Daniel Muller carousel with figures on a T.M. Harden frame. T.M. Harden was a frame builder, quite a marketer of amusements and such. So that was what got me started in that particular. Now, those figures are in private collections now. That took place with like 89, I think it was. So grew up from there, and that giraffe is still in the back of my mind. But years later, when I was in college in 1981, I was in the library the one day and I stumbled across an article on carousels. And I thought, this is interesting. So I started reading through that and I thought, this is really interesting. So look for more articles in the library. So it's all in the days before the internet. So you're kind of limited to what you can do in the library. And so I found enough articles to get me inspired on some things. Started doing a lot more research, which eventually, one of the things I saw led me to the Amusement Park Club International. Bunch of amusement park crazies that would get together for 3 or 4 days in the summertime, go do all kinds of amusement parks in the particular area there. And so the first year that I went, I had some pictures from the Albion Carousel. The college professor who told them the other one time, he says, yeah, he said, there's a carousel over in Albion. I said, no, there's not. So I said, yeah, there's an old one over there. I said, no, there's not. Went over to see, yes, there is. So I started doing some research on that. Took photos with me to the first of the APCI conventions. And the editor of the National Carousel Association's publication that they would put out was sitting there at the table, had all these back issues all over the table. And I thought, okay, I want to talk to this person. I need to show him these pictures and see what he can tell me. And whenever he finally got a moment, I had looked through this one issue, and there's pictures in here that, oh my gosh, it looks just like the Albion Carousel. I thought, I think this might be it. It's supposed to be the first carousel that operated at Cedar Point. And I thought, wow, okay. So I showed him the pictures, and there are some differences from over the years of use and alterations and such. He said, well, he said it could be the same one. So I worked researching that for a couple of years and finally stumbled into the two ends of the story and was able to make connections on it. So I just started teaching about 82, 83, whenever that all came together. Through the Amusement Park Club, then that also led me to the National Carousel Association. And about the same time, there was a magazine that was coming out that was called Carousel News and Trader. So great publications for those of us crazies that were very passionate about all of that. Carousel's in the lower right. Some of you may recognize that's the one down at Kennywood. It's 1926 William Densel Carousel. So during the boom years in the 1980s and 90s, investing in carousels was a rich man's game, and that wasn't me. And I did manage to buy a middle row horse back at that time, restored it, but it was not uncommon for the very best figures, the most outstanding figures. Some of these power dealers and collectors would come in and they'd buy a whole carousel out from an amusement park, cherry pick the ones that they wanted, and then sell off the rest of them. And in doing that, it was not uncommon to see a $50,000 figure being sold. Some of the best ones, $75,000 to $100,000 and more. So what over those course of those years, a lot of really great carousels were sold off and are in private collections. Part of the problem about that now is that the market is starting to turn. Those were the power collectors back in those times. They've gotten old, they're dying, they're dead. Their kids don't want the stuff, and the stuff's coming back on the market. And there's some big collections that are potentially coming on the market. I don't know if the market's going to saturate it or going to be able to absorb at the kind of prices. For me then, I got married in 1987, started teaching in 82, 83, and So I retired in 2017. And I told people, I said, whenever I retire, I'm going back to my passions, the stuff I really enjoyed before being married, before teaching, and I want to go back to that stuff. And so having retired there in 2017, I made it till December. I thought, boy, this is great. First 2 months, it's like a wonderful retirement. And then it's like, I got way too much time on my hands. I kind of find it part-time work, got to do something. So by December, I was talking to some friends in Buffalo, and they were telling me that he had a street organ, hand-crank street organ, like a monkey organ kind of thing, that there was a little mannequin, little figure on the front. There was a little conductor, and she had been broken off at the shins again. And he says, oh, yeah, he says, Pat and Rose are the ones that are working on it. He says, oh, yeah, he says, they're the ones working on the Buffalo Heritage Carousel project out there. He says, you're about, I said, oh, right, back that sentence up. I said, yes, I'm familiar with the Carousel project, but I says, you know the people that are working on it? He said, oh, yeah. He says, do you think they'd be okay for someone like me to come visit? And he says, you call Pat. He says, you tell him, you know us, you're in the National Carousel Association, that you're a wood carver. He'll be glad to see you. I've never been one to rush into anything, so I sat on that for a week. And I finally called and talked with Pat, and he says, certainly. He says, you come up and bring your carving tools. It's always, you have no idea what you just offered. I've wanted to do this stuff for 35 years. And I said, boy, hold on. So got there December 21st of 2017. And took me all of, to get to North Tonawanda from here, it's about 2 hours and 15-minute drive. December 21st wasn't bad weather at that point in the year. So I get up there. The wood room takes all 5 minutes to see. Walk down the hall. There's the paint room. Took all of 5 minutes, like 15 minutes. I said, well, I'm here. I says, what can I do? How about today? He says, well, you want to carve a leg? He says, absolutely. I said, brought me tools. I said, I'll carve you a leg. So that is what got me started with them up there. So carved the first leg out, and about 90 minutes later, I handed it to him. And he still needed sanding and such, but I don't know if the neck, okay. We'll back up a second. Okay, so these, for me, restoring meant learning from highly knowledgeable mentors. This is Patrick Stanzik on the left. He's from up in North Tonawanda. He was telling me that during that little tour through the two rooms there, he says, oh yeah, he says, Rosa Patton's our paint consultant. I says, oh my God, Rosa Patton? I've only been following her for like 40 years. She's like one of the top carousel restoration artists in the country, going back to original paint. And he says, oh yeah, he says, she's our paint consultant. I said, oh my gosh. He says, I said, when she's here, can I just be there and watch? I said, just tie me up, gag me, stand me in the corner. I said, just let me watch. And he says, oh no, if you're in the room, she's gonna have your paint. I said, oh. So not only did I learn wood restoration, I also learned a lot of paint technique from her and the other people, the decorative painters that were working up there. They would get a batch of horses ready. She would come in and they would spend 2 weeks doing anywhere from 4 to 6 horses or animals during the course of the week. This is the Sea Dragon. This one came from a carousel in Detroit. They decided they were going to keep the really grand armored horse off the carousel and not restore it. So they found the dragon instead to go in its place. So I don't know if you can see it very well here, but this is the first leg that I carved right here. And I told him, I says, you give me a good model, I sell carving the leg. So 90 minutes later, when I handed it to him, he's looking at it over and he looks at her and he goes, okay. He says, you can come back. I did not know this was an audition. He says, no. He says, no, what you're doing is great. He says, you've got to understand it, understood and such. So this one particular horse right here, I think here's another picture of mid-legged rabbit. I worked on 3.5 legs on that horse. Front leg's completely carved, one hind leg completely carved, and the other leg, he said, another guy had been there previous 6 months, and he says, he doesn't understand carousel. He's all about anatomically correct horses. And he says, it's not the way the carousel figures were carved. So he says, see what you can do with this one. So I had a little bit of work around around the foot on that particular one. But the carousel is up there. It's a 1924 Spillman Engineering Park model carousel that came from Howe's Neck in Massachusetts, and it had been in storage since 1956. It came out of storage in about the mid 80s and went into storage in Connecticut and then stored again down in Mansfield, Ohio, until they found the Carousel, that this is the one that they wanted then for up in Buffalo. So the restoration for me meant priming, filling surfaces and imperfections, sanding, repeat, go through the process again, and repeat again, because they wanted factory smooth surfaces. They didn't want dents and dings left over, no honest wear. We want them smooth. So that's the mentality that got pounded in their head. And then eventually to base coating. But these are two of the outside row horses at this point. And this is the one that I worked on all the legs, the 3 legs. One of the unique things about this particular horse is this feature right here. The gentleman that had the Carousel built, he wanted some extra special things for his Carousel. Give me a few extras in there. Well, that dog on the blanket, you'd only ever see on the Herschel Spillman deer on the blanket. You'd never see it on a horse. This is the only one that you ever see the dog actually on a horse. So that one I did quite a bit of painting on that one. But yeah, we worked back. They documented all the original colors on there, and then worked with those and tried to create a cohesive color pattern for the entire Carousel.
Sure. I mean, to interrupt, what kind of paint you use on this sort of sure. I mean, originally, like, they were going to be outside. And
yeah, originally they were about all lead paints.
Yeah.
But what we're using here on the bodies, we're using Winsor Newton tube oils. Takes 2 coats where oil paint or the lead paints would have only needed 1, but you get a lot of great depth of color with the tube oils. And then the trappings, because it's a higher wear, is the one-shot enamels. So they're all oil-based.
Okay.
I'm all original. How do you find out what the original was? That must be quite a...
No, well, it's heat, stripping, pick some paint off. This is shoe. That's the one that I'm working on right now. But whenever it came to me, it was like a real dark brown with a light dry brush. So I've stripped paint down, and so you can see here's that kind of the golden brown that's underneath there. So you just work your way down through the layers of paint until you get there. And then you document it, you pull out your color cards, you match them as best you can, and work from there. It also meant gold and aluminum leafing before you get to your multiple layers of varnish. These particular frames that we were working on here were some of the last things that we did toward finishing up, and these were around mirrors. And in the entire Carousel, I'll show you in a second, you'll see where those mirror frames are. But yeah, we were doing plenty of gold leafing, aluminum leafing. Yeah, good fun. And it meant being part of a team. They got to see the entire Carousel come back together. It's up at Canal Side, down on the river in Buffalo. It's right across from where the Sabres play, between the Sabres and the river. It's right there. What's the Skyway? Skyway runs right overhead.
And it's operating?
It is operating. It's shut down right now for winter maintenance. They had some cracks that have shown up, and they got a little touch-up paint to do and polish the brass, get it ready to go. I think they'll be open Valentine's Day weekend, and probably not until May at that point. But there's the full Carousel there. And those gold frames we were doing are these ones that are up here. But if you're going up in that area, it's exit 6 right off 190, going into town, and then just follow signs for Canal Side. And there's multiple ways to get lost out there. Let me tell you, every time I go, it seems like I didn't come in this way before. How'd I get here? And parking is down near the Carousel. It's like cobblestone, and it's minimal parking down there. There is a parking ramp. Lecom has a branch up there, big parking ramp. It's right there. Just a short walk across there, and you're right there. The building, it's a solar-powered building. Tesla provided the solar panels that are up on the roof, so they generate their own electricity in order to run the Carousel there. So typically, being part of all of that, working on that for 2.5 years, and being shut down for pandemic for a time, it's like gets in your system. It's like I was living the best life, loved what I was doing. So a year into it, I started thinking, it's like, I'd like to do a project of my own. So come on, iGen. Hey, Morgan.
Hi. Wait, start.
You'll set up.
Don't.
Yep, comes on. So this one came up on eBay, and I started following it, watching it on there, and I thought, yeah, that's
Nice. Just had everything I was looking for. It's an outside road figure. And oh my gosh. Yeah, I really. So I communicated with the dealer. He was out near Boston, and we talked back and forth. And I said, yeah, I'm just going to pull the trigger. I'm doing this. So I said, now, do I need a truck to come get this, or will it fit in my car? He said, oh, no, it comes all apart. This is all the parts right there. Well, and then some were missing. And so that's what came to me, was all of that piled. And so worked on that up there whenever you get in, kind of in between, because by May of 2018, we had the restoration on the original figures to the Carousel. The restoration woodwork was all done. They still needed painted, but that was done. So Patrick, whose job was under contract, he's done. He said, no, I'm done. He said, that's all I was paid for. Well, they still had 3 replacement horses that they bought to put in for some that were missing. And so they asked me, will you stay on and restore those? I said, well, yeah. So I stayed on, took lead on those. And so in between that, I worked on this one. And fun project. And so whatever you buy, and you're thinking about restoring, well, what are you going to do? Okay, that leads into this phase right now. First thing you have to do, you got to go through and assess what you have. What do you have? What are you missing? In this case, that last horse, this whole stack of wood in the rump and the whole stack here in the chest was missing. And so you got to get wood. There were some pieces that were broken off that were missing. So it was a project, no question about it. It was a project. And you have to figure out, are there weak or broken joints? In this case, on the goat that I have here, this is one of the hind legs. There are these 3 fence staples, each one in about 1.5 inches. That's all that's holding the hind leg together. Once I pull it out, it's like, okay, and leg comes off. And you have to figure, are there nails that are in there too? Well, shoe here was full of nails. He was in a situation where I think it was high humidity. And if you've got a joint that is crack loose, moisture gets in. The old rabbit's hide glue that they use to glue them up is water soluble. You get moisture, it gets weak, it's coming apart. Well, as it fell apart, they felt, best they do, let's just nail it back together. And if you got gaps that didn't line up properly, just fill with wood filler. All that has to come out. So this is the base of one of the 2 horns from here. Wow. This one was, I think, one was off and one was loose. I think it was this one. The left one is the loose one. And whenever I finally cut nails and got it out of there, it had 2 original dowels that went opposing dowels that held that horn on there. There were 10 nails, and there was 1 corrugated metal fastener that held it on. All of that has to come out. So it's all been repaired at this point. The horns are back on. If there's original factory paint, that was Gene's question. And if you find that original paint, on the rump, there's some cross straps, and there's the alizarin crimson, there is some yellow stripes that are on there. Found yellow stripes on the bridle up here on both sides that followed around, single one here. One of the interesting things was this little feature right here that wasn't really noticeable whenever it came to market. Whenever I started stripping paint, it's like, there's a little eagle's head on there. It's like, oh, that's neat. I was originally painted with red. I'm going to put a little gold leaf on there, I think. Go ahead.
I don't mean to interrupt.
I want you to.
What kind of wood do you use? Do you have to match the wood that, or you
Mow of the Aria, basswood, and poplar.
So how about them we saw?
Now, straight grain, clear. C.W. Parker that was building out in Kansas, he would use cottonwood. which from some that have restored, they tell me it's the stinkiest wood you ever want to run. And he said, I'll never work on another one. And went, okay.
Okay.
So, but yeah, I'm using basswood for replacing. I'm not seeing that this is poplar. I'm not seeing that green tint that you get with poplar. So I'm thinking there's probably a lot of good basswood in there.
Okay.
So yes, if you have questions, I don't mind. Feel free to ask me. I used to be a teacher. I'm used to being there around. Sorry. All right. Still with the assessment now. You have rotted or kunky wood that you have to deal with. With that one particular horse, I had looked like a little woodworm damage towards the back end. Soaked it in with consolidating epoxies. In this case, there was a chunk of wood that's kind of weak in this area. So this is West System epoxy. It's in here. These little tubes are duct tape just to keep the holes from filling in. Won't have to drill them out later. Do you have anything that's warped? That first horse that I had, it was cut right down the middle of the nose. So the one thing that Patrick told me was you can carve out enough wood inside that you can get those surfaces to come back together. Because if you try to force that sprung wood back in, it's going to release sooner or later. And when it does, it's going to take out a lot of other wood with it. So that's one of those pictures I just loved. I love it whenever I could catch the heads in clamps like that. Because nothing really shows people what you're doing better than a head in clamps. It really sums it up pretty well. You got to figure out what's missing or broken and needs carved anew. This is from one of the middle row horses from Waldamer that I bought on the secondary market a few years ago. I have pictures out on the carousel missing this lower portion of the hind leg. And one of the stories I've been told over the years was that whenever a part would break off, they would just put it in a bucket inside the center area of the carousel. And so whenever it went to auction in '88, they put all the parts back where they belonged. It was weak. Whenever I loaded up in the truck to bring it home, I'd stop to pick up another horse for a woman that's carving some feet for it. And so I was pushing hers in against this one on yours. Did me a favor. Took it apart. So what had happened originally was they had filled it in with Bondo. A couple of pieces of window stop, a couple of dowel rods, and filled it with Bondo and slathered over it. All that Bondo had to come out. I added some good wood on there. And then this is the repaired leg here. Restoring these, we've got to remove their part paint. Pick all those old layers of paint down to the original colors and document them and remove the rest of the paint if it's not worth saving. Now, this little horse is one of the last ones I just got last May. It had been restored back in 1974 out in Oregon. And what was interesting was that the saddle and blanket had no primer. I don't know what kind of paint they used, but there was no primer. And some of the other areas didn't seem like it had much either. But this is the right front shoulder of it. And if there's nails or corrugated metal fasteners, you want to get them out. Means cutting them, driving them out, and digging them out. This is Shoe's hindquarters, and you can see all nail holes up across there. And that's where he got his name, Shoe. One more he has laying in bed, I bet call him Billy. And the one more he has laying in bed, I kept thinking, like, that whole plank around here, both sides, are just full of nails around there. And it looks like the way a cobbler would nail a sole on a shoe. I could think, Shoe. Yeah. Shoe's got a new name. So, yeah. This is one of the nails I dug out. And you can see here, this portion of it's pretty heavily corroded. This is the core of it that was left. And it was, there's spiral nails in there. There were, I didn't know there were screws. There was galvanized nails. There's just a mess. Yep.
Dr. So you said it's corroded towards the top of the nail there, toward the head. Was that also like thicker to begin with, or is that the corroded in?
I think with the corrosion, it kind of expands out a little bit. But whenever you put those nails in, they're not meant to be there. What happens is that you're penetrating into the wood, and it creates an opening for moisture to get in there. Moisture gets in, the nail rusts. when the nail rusts, it causes pucky wood, it causes wood rot, and it's not a good situation. So you need to get all the nails out as much as possible. So it means taking it apart. If you got loose joints, you got to take it apart, secure them. As this shoe begins head taken off here. This joint was loose, this one was loose as well. And so it's like, okay, get in here and just wedge it apart. And the body, there was gaps between parts that did not line up. So, of course, they filled it with wood putty. And so take it apart, clean it out, dig out nails, and then put it back together. On the inside, there's wood blocks that are in here to help the structure from side to bottom to hold those in place. There's another piece that's up across here that the top board with the saddle sits onto. And so all of those had fallen loose and they're laying inside the body. So, well, I guess I've got to put those back. So they're all back on now, and they're from there. Assembling parts, the tight joints, I use Tight Bond, original formula glue. And if it's not so tight and there's some smaller gaps in there, then I'll use West System epoxy. So that you'll see that in boat repair that they'll use for that. And then the appropriate fillers. This is the one leg. I think it's the other leg sitting right there. This whole lamination is right here. Was not lined up. Pried it off. Cleaned it up. Put it back together. So this was shoe getting his head put back together. Whenever I posted that picture, I had more people going, okay, I saw that picture first. It's like, what do you do with a goat head in a pocket? It's like, oh, now once they read what it's about, I said, oh, now I understand. But yeah, a couple of people were a little bit alarmed over that. But it's like, no, God, suck. You have to add wood sometimes. In this case with shoe, his left ear had a chunk that had been cut out that they repaired with wood filler. Just pull it back in, saying, nope, that can't stay. So new wood got added in, epoxied in, carved back. We'll see that in a second. Both of the hind feet were missing a chunk of wood off the front. Add wood, carve it back, get it right. So there's the hind feet. Still have a little bit of work in these areas to do yet. And the new ear on there. Bigger parts. Now, the first horse that you saw was in a pile of pieces. Now, once we got the body back together, we get this new wood all in the back here. That's how good we carved. So, it went from there to this. But everything is bright colored wood. That's all new wood in there. Sometimes it means rebuilding damaged wood. This particular horse, same dealer I bought the first one from. He sent me pictures. Says, hey, what do you think of this horse? He said, well, I said, it looks to me like it's been chemically stripped and scrubbed hard. Wood grains, raised sizes. It's kind of I don't know. So he says, well, you interested? And I said, I've got 3 horses already. I don't know where I'm going to put them in the house. Let alone bringing a 4th one into the picture here. And he says, well, what do you think? He said, would you restore it? And then we put it back in an auction, sell it, split the proceeds on it. I said, okay, I'll do that. So it arrives, we get it set up out in the milk house, and I'm standing there looking at it in the first 10 minutes and going, no. I said, it wasn't chemically stripped. It was sandblasted.
What the hell, my?
Yeah, it was sandblasted. There is a hollow here in the cheek where they left it too long. The lips, the teeth, the nostrils were pretty well blasted away. One glass eye was just barely hanging in there because there was no wood to hold it still. He had a couple pieces here that were broken off. That had to be rebuilt. Cracked down the side. The back side of the neck was just all raised wood grain. So you have to resurface it with the epoxies and rebuild it. But I'll show you finished pictures in here later too. So the first horse, once you get the structural issues all addressed, then you're ready to prime. So here you can see more of the new wood that's in here as well. So I'd use Kills oil-based primer for me. This is what I use. Now people are doing acrylic paints. They use a different primer. Some is more water-based, but I use oil-based. Tills oil-based primer, minimum of 3 coats, sanding in between each coat so you can get a nice, glossy, smooth surface.
Then you just you're spraying it over. No? The brush it off.
Brush it all on.
Okay.
I use a Pro-Glaze automotive spot filler. I can get from like
Powell's up in McCain. But it's a flexible filler. It'll adhere right in there, but you can see all these little bites. Oh, that's got to be filled, medicure, sand it, prime it again, fill it again. So eventually, you get them all. It's funny, the first round you guys get all the really big, gross sizes, the big ones. And then next round, it's like, oh, boy, did I miss that one. And you're going through catching a little smaller. Well, about the third round, you're getting into the really small ones now. It's like, okay, now we're getting someplace.
So then you get into your base coat. I use a Sherwin-Williams oil-based paint.
This is the Walt W. Horst. And then starting with the Winsor Newton tube oils. You can see here in this first coat, it's pretty light. But by the time you get into the second coat, the colors are richer. I think on this horse, the thing I was most proud of is those 2 feathers right there. Iron sheath. I was going, what kind of feathers do I paint these? They painted like eagle feathers originally at Waldemere. And I could do better. And I thought, And I looked at feathers on online for a month. And I kept on coming back to the red-tailed hawk feathers, the wing feathers. So it's not quite the exact shape of it, but I was pretty proud of that one. But yeah, there's no airbrushing. That's all. Brush it, pounce it, and use a mop brush to smooth it.
I hope you have stock at Windsor and Newton. Yeah.
You know what? I got quite a case full of peas. Every time I go up to Michael's or I get on Dick Blick, it's like, what colors do I need? And then it's like, oh yeah, I already got that one. But yeah, so yeah, I do have quite a few of those. But try to focus on what I use most, though.
Then you get adding the fine detail. On that wall of your verse, there's this 3-ray pattern on the shark.
What is that? It doesn't look like a rope. It kind of looks like a rope. So another restorer that she and I bonded back 2019, I think it was. Her husband died just like a few days before my dad did. I mean, years like. So we were grieving at the same time, and she's like 74, 75. I mean, she's a wonderful person, and she's well, paint it like a Makati. I said, oh, what? She said, a Makati. I said, what is a Makati? She says, it's a Native American hair rope. She says, look him up. She says, you'll see.
Did my research. So there's like a base coat, shading, and then you get
the stripes across, and then there's more shading on that, and then there's these little strands of hairs that are in there, 2 different colors of those to build the whole thing. It was pretty good. So it was supposed to be a Makati. I don't know. Looks like Mecat, M-E-C-A-T. It's good to me.
Then you get into
The gold leafing, and aluminum leafing. I use 23 karat gold leaf, and then the aluminum leaf, very inexpensive. But and then I use more glazing and for depth of color. You notice in here this isn't just, and this is actually silver, the aluminum leaf underneath here, with a coat of paint over it. It takes on that gold look, and then you use some of the cadmium red to create the depth in there. And then there's some other that's used in here in the fringe that just gives it more depth of color. And then you get into the striping and the pen striping. Some of the crazy stuff there. There's usually grooves that are cut in between here. So that's what they refer to as painting in the ditch. You're just in the ditches there. And then you get like in these areas, you kind of freehand that in.
Did you freehand on the right?
That one I did. I did a lot of research, found pictures that would work. And so yeah, that's some of my.
How do you work?
Well, I lean on the former wife too, who used to be a sign painter. So she'll come out, she'll help with some of the painting once in a while with some of the stripes, and it takes a while to get her there. But whenever she does, like, oh man. Finish up with two coats of. I use a long oil spar varnish, the old Masters. Used to be Balin's whitewater restoration varnish, but it was bought out by Mohawk, I think it was, and so they don't make it anymore. It's like, can't find it. So did all the research, and Old Masters seems to be the product that works best for me. So,
Wow.
kind of through the process. These get into some of the before and afters of different projects that I've worked on since 2019. This is the first one that you saw that was in the pile of pieces. I figure it's about 1895, Charles Loof, outer row stander. At that time, there was a carver by the name of Marcus Illians that was working in his shop. So we got to figure it out that probably Marcus Illians did a lot of the work on this one. And then about 1903, Illians left, went out on his own, started building his own carousels.
Is he missing a tail or?
At that point, yes. We didn't stick it. It's a real horsehair tail that's on it. This is the second horse I bought the year after that. This one came out of Charleston, South Carolina. It had been purchased about in the early 1960s. The story was in Coney Island. And it was a wreck, absolute wreck. All these white areas that you see across here, it was kind of a soft wood filler. It was just kind of gummy-ish feeling. The head was filtered about 1/4 of an inch. Split right down the middle of the nose. I started working on it. This whole front end of the nose fell off. The part of the ear wood from around here was missing. There was a piece of wood here that was needed in order to keep the eyeball from falling out. It was a mess. That was a pandemic purchase. Yeah, that was I bought on eBay. It's like, okay, everything's locked down. And it's not like I can drive down here to pick the thing up. And went, So I said, would you guys ship? No, we're getting too old to worry about trying to build a crate and shit. I said, okay. Well, then a guy from Boston calls, and we're talking. I said, hey, is your pickup delivery guy, does he do work for people that aren't antique dealers? He says, oh, heck yeah. So I got a hold of Merrick, and he says, yeah, absolutely. I'm still working during the pandemic. He said, I'll go get it. So he went down, brought it on back up. So I worked on that through the pandemic then. But that was an early, probably around 1885, 1890, at the very latest. That's a real early one. So it looks like that now. It resides up in Erie, near Mill Creek Mall. This is some of Kay's pinstriping.
Is it in a home? Or?
Yeah, private buyer.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is the one that was sandblasted. And, this is like one of the pictures I was skeeling was like, oh yeah, there's quite a crack there. Front knee, it was cracked loose, and then it needed. So this is him on the right.
Wow. Incredible.
There's the Waldemar one. This is one of the pictures from the auction listing. But that's the way I remember it's this horse from back in whenever it was still Waldemar up. As soon as I saw the picture, I was at a convention, I saw the picture, I am like 99.5% positive that came off Waldemar. And came home from the convention, pulled out the auction catalog, like, oh, there it is. So the market has softened a lot. I mean, the boom years there in the 80s and 90s, you got to the late 1990s, and there was a stock market adjustment there. In about 2008, there was another stock market adjustment, which kind of hurt the market. And like I mentioned, those people that were the power collectors are dying or dead, and they're coming back on the market. And this particular horse I got for less than 25% than what the buyer bought it for in 1998 or 88.
Oh, wow.
So the market's not what it was. So I can afford you to jump back in and play now.
Where do you get the replacement Corsair tails?
Can't tell you. If you see a live horse running around there, thought see it.
Just so you know.
There's a couple places on eBay that I found them, or online. Actually, there was one guy in California that I used to be able to get them from, and you could get everything from bear claws, skunk skins, skulls of wild animals kind of stuff. And he had horse tails. So anyhow, back there about 2019, I could get a good tail for about $28. You can't touch them now for like over $100, and they have to come from overseas because the PETA won't let you lather them. Yeah, you can't do that to the horses. And then you get purists. There are these horse people. They're funny group of people, anyways. Oh, that's so inhumane. You know, they think that we're out there cutting tails off live horses. Like, are you stupid? But yeah, go ahead. Question.
Speaking of overseas, are a lot of these original carvers from Europe, or was this more of an American sort of?
Yes.
Or a little bit of everything.
Most of them are very immigrant carvers.
Oh,
But they were established here in the United States, and they had their facilities or companies where they're building here in the United States. Yeah, good question, though. Yeah, this guy, the card, this one, he's a Russian immigrant, Lithuanian. Denzel from the last horse there, he was a German immigrant, worked with Loof in near Coney Island, and then eventually he moved to Philadelphia to work for a different company. And so yeah, they move around.
I feel like you can tell that horse looks like a Russian horse. Just like
Cossacks?
just the different
Oh, yeah.
like reasons.
It's a very aggressive looking horse.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now this one, whenever I was at the convention where I saw the Waldemar horse online, before the convention was over, we went to one of the carousels up in Elmira, and here is one of the women she and her husband had been dealers for years, and she came across, so I was going one way, she was coming out. She's, Dale, she says, I don't think I'd ever been. She's been to any of the conventions, and I says, not since like 86, 87 maybe, as it's been a long time. And she says, well, I've got this horse. And she says, there's nobody down in southeastern Pennsylvania. She's down near Phoenixville. She says, there's nobody down there that does the kind of work that you do. Would you be willing to take this one horse and carve new feet for it? Obviously, it sat either on a wet floor, drew moisture from concrete. All 3 feet had rotted off. And all he had was stumps. And I said, well, if I get that Waldemar horse, I'll pick up yours on the way back through. So lots of research trying to figure out, okay, how should these feet look? And so I was able to recreate feet for it and get it back to her in about 2 months. She did not want it restored. Just I've learned to appreciate the old paint, and she's I like it like that. And oh, this thing's bad. But I thought, now her husband, they had collected and dealt in early American antiques, but whenever the carousel trade came in, they jumped on board with that, and so they were buying and selling with those too, and that's how they ended up with this one. So I had asked her regarding his work, and I said, there's something wrong with the back of the saddle here on the candle. I said, the wood grain should be going front to back and it's running side to side. I said, did your husband do any work on it? Oh, no, he never did any work on it. Oh, okay. So a friend in Brooklyn Heights sent me a picture, and it's like, yeah, he did do some work on it. Because John was there and saw the work being done on it. It's like, yeah, so, but she didn't know anything done with it. Okay. So that horse is back down in Phoenixville now. Was outside in Philadelphia. Oh, jeez. My reactions aren't good enough. This wing came from an auction over near Hudson, New York. And it was, the paint on it was thick, loose, or tight, down to raw wooden places. It was just, yeah. This is when we were sitting at the carving one day. I said, I just bought a horse. Yeah, I put in the one bid on this one on the one auction. And I kept thinking, somebody's going to outbid me. They're going to outbid me. Nobody bid. I got a horse. Yeah. So fortunately, my sister and brother-in-law were on vacation in New England, and they picked it up on their way back through for me. It's like, yeah, I like this. This is fun. So yeah, this one I think originally was probably more black and white than the bay and white, but it's pretty much the colors that I found on it. Elmer Mark. What did I know? Come on. You know, these are little things somewhere on there. All right, so we go there. Okay, this was last year's project. This is the line that came off Waldemar's auction, from their auction. It was sold in 1988 for a very hefty sum. And there was a doctor at Erie that he was there at the auction. He bought three figures from the carousel. He bought the lion, one of the outside row horses, and a middle row jumper. And he bought 3 other figures, but now he's downsizing, and this one, the 4 of the horses came back on the market last spring. And
I heard about it, went up, I saw them up there, I thought, oh, yeah. Can't afford it. Because the horse in 1988 sold for $53,000. And they thought, well, you should get about 60% of that. And I says, even at that, I can't afford that. That's still outside my market. So, and the lion, I think it sold for about $50,000 or $53,000 also. So the owner of the Coney Lake Park Carousel down there now contacts me and says, you will never believe what I was just gifted. I said, what? I was just gifted the lion from Waldemar. I said, I do not know the right people. So I just don't know the right people. So he says, would you restore it for me that it can go back to work on Coney Lake's Carousel? And I says, man. So I'm a one-man shop. I said, that to his head. So I got a friend in Indiana and one in Ohio, two best enablers a person could ever want to have in their lives. And they said, oh, you got to do it. You got to do it. I said, okay. So I think originally the teeth were connected here. Sometime before 1981, I think some vandal got a hold where they were connected and just went and pulled them out. So at the time of the auction, there were no teeth on the top at all. So that's what you're seeing here in the orthodontics going on there. Was adding wood back in for those teeth to get those back in there. That was a serious project. Doing that mane gave me gray hair. Can you tell? Yeah. This other restorer in India kept saying, it gets darker the farther back you go. They should be almost black. Or should be almost black. And back underneath here, there's nice. No, I don't know. Oh, I anguished on that. And I had more guns.
How much did that weigh?
Generally, it took 3 people to move it. Because, it's not a solid body, as you saw in some of those letters. The body is hollow. I don't know if the neck was hollow, but it's heavy. Smaller horses I can handle. I can throw them around. They're not bad. You can muscle them around, but you get this thing. It's like, no, it's big. This is the last one that I had done. This is Mel. His friend in Indiana, she seems to think that you need names for all. I'm going, no. She said, we have your names. So she named this one Melba, as in Melba Toast. And okay. So it became Mel. This one was purchased way back in the mid-'70s by a guy and his wife up in Binghamton, New York. And whenever it came from Oregon to his place, all he did was he cut the crate off, the top half of the crate. The horse never came out of its crate for 50 years. And it sat there. And so the grandson lives in the house now. The son's trying to sell it. And we talked to one night on the phone or messaging, he thought I said, boy, it's a good-looking horse. He says, well, are you interested? I don't need another project. Well, he said, what would you think about it? And of course, my 2 best enablers said, we gotta buy it. I said, yeah, okay. So this one, the guy that restored it had done a lot of good carving, an exceptional carving. But the hocks were brand new wood. There was new wood. There's a little piece up here. The tail is all new carving. There's quite a crack that followed right down the neck here. But the transitions from old to new wood, they weren't quite. So I had some work there to do. But that was one of the last ones. Finished Mel back in the summer.
Is that the one? Is that the little small?
Fairly small, yeah. Yeah, it's an inside rope prancer. This is Shoe. This is what Shoe looked like in the auction photos. They showed, that was the auction photos. But it just, and you look at pictures, it's like you start to go, okay, I can see this needs repair. This is, but there was something's wrong here. So you start to detect those things that are wrong. But this is Shoe in progress. So at this point, this side is on. No, it's on. Yeah, I'm ready to put the top board up here that has the saddle on it. Flip it over. I've got to do some work on the legs because the legs, in the shoddy work that was done, they used a whole lot of yellow glue, but it didn't attach to anything. So all that glue has to come off in order to get to good wood in order to put it back together. So the underside of the body also has all that yellow glue. It has to come off there.
How do you get on that? Is it
Carve it off.
carved?
Yeah, I'll just go at it with some mallet tools and just work it off. The epoxy will fill it in, stick it right back in. So I've done some other work for some other people who are restoring. I've done some tails. This one's out of Washington State. This last fall, did a leg for a woman in Tennessee. She, or Kentucky anyways. The horse she rode, it was missing one hind leg. But that particular style of horse, both hind legs are parallel, same pose on both. So I said, I could do a lot better if I had the other leg. She said, well, it's loose. I'll just take it right off. So she brought me the leg, and so I made the new one and sent it to her. This other friend in Indiana, she had this really exceptional outside road jumpers, Philadelphia Toboggan Company horse that this piece was broken off and missing. And it had been painted over, the end broken ends have been painted for years and such. And so whenever she and her husband bought it, she said, someday I got to get that fixed before I restore it. So needless to say, whenever I was out through there in September, I said, well, no, August. I've got the pattern for it. I said, cut out the wood, we'll get it attached. Next day we'll come back, we'll carve it back. So Jingles here is complete again. But yeah, it was a fun little project. She sat back here going, oh, how do you do that? I never understood how that would work, just watching all the mallets and such working along there. Kind of finishing up here. If you want to follow any of my projects and progress that I do, I post on one page. It's called Carousel Restorations. A lot of different restorers that go on there and they'll post pictures of progress and such. LaPav's Journey, that's Gray Havens. She's out in Indiana, the other enabler. LaPav's is French, which means wreck. And so, yeah, she's like me. She doesn't buy pieces that are outstandingly finished. We like projects. So we can work on. And then just under my own name there, I don't go political. I don't post family, personal photos and stuff on there often. So, you can follow kind of what I'm doing on there. I usually post all once a week, whatever project I'm working on at the time. So that kind of gets it through. But yeah, that's shoe. Part of shoe.